Welcome along to the next instalment of our Landlord 2020 Vision campaign running throughout January. And for this instalment, we've come along to Zoopla Towers in London, and I'm joined by Research Director Richard Donnell. And Richard, it's so great to have your input into our campaign, because we really want to, throughout this month, really focus and drill down on the things that landlords are going to have to focus on to be profitable in 2020. Really, they have to have that laser vision. They have to have a clear view. You're a landlord yourself, accidental landlord. What's your view on the key things that landlords should be really concentrating on over the next 12 months?
Well, I think the general background of slower house price growth is something landlords need to think about, because it could well persist for a while. And I think people need to think about, well, why did I become a landlord? What do I want out of my investment portfolio? We've had the impact of the tax changes on higher rate payers. So people probably should focus this, in 2020 around the portfolio. What do I want my portfolio to look like? How could I add value to my property? Maybe speak to a local agent, because actually if I do something to try and add value to my property, will that even increase the rent? Will it add value really? Or is it sort of something I think is good? Because again, we often look at properties with our homeowner hat on, rather than thinking about, well, what do renters want, what do tenants want out of a property? So I think it's all about evaluating your investments in thinking about a sort of weaker housing market outlook.
I think that's very, very good advice, Richard. And, one of the things that we really try to promote at Property Tribes is for landlords to consider their net cash flow every month. Particularly if we, as you say, we may be in a long sustained period of not very much house price inflation. Cash flow month on month is money that you can spend, but you might have to wait years to get capital growth. And I think certainly for new landlords as well, that their focus, would you say, should be on cash flow?
Absolutely. It's what drives the reason for investing is that monthly cash flow from the property, and I think that's what I think landlords should be focusing more on. And again, chatting to agents, doing your research locally, coming onto Zoopla to do your research around what value are people letting out properties for, what kind of properties generate what rent levels, what rent level would you like to achieve if you're going to buy a new property. So it's really thinking about what's in demand, what do tenants want, what's there a lack of, and sort of what's going to let really well in the markets, because every housing market's different. Every housing market has its own little local differences in terms of what people want in local areas. And again, a lot of landlords invest locally, so you've really got to sort of optimise your investment plans for what people want locally.
No, I think cash flow is so important, and as we always say, if you do have cash flow, you can remain in the game longer and hopefully achieve some of that capital growth. I think a great strategy in the current market conditions is to try and buy at a discount and then force the appreciation through refurbishment. Once, of course, as you rightly said, that you have done your research to make sure that is going to add value. Do you think that's a good way forward for a landlord if they've got basic cosmetic refurbishment skills?
Yes, and I think it's working out what are the things that what really matters to the people you're trying to let to, what's going to be most attractive. So yes, as ever, finding properties that are slightly tired, doing a really nice refurb, hopefully not too much structural. Although planning rules have changed, so it is possible to add value to property now. Going into the loft, adding extensions is far easier now, but that adds costs a lot more money. But yes, that's always the name of the game, is to buy something that sort of looks like it's got some value in it, and you can add value through development, and then let it out.
I think, Richard, one of the other things that is really useful to landlords, certainly when they're researching properties, and they can do that obviously via Zoopla, is floor plans. I get so much information from floor plans. If I'm looking at maybe a 2-bed flat, I would be looking at 2 rooms of a similar size, one with an ensuite. That's just one of the resources that are free out there for landlords to use, isn't it?
Absolutely, and all consumers, whether they're people buying a house as a landlord or as a tenant, the floor plan is one of the most looked after things. So again, I think it's really important that you make sure your agent is going to take great, when you're letting the properties, great pictures, really sell the property through good pictures, the floor plan. That's really important as people make their decisions around sort of what a property can deliver. And again, if you've especially got 2 people who want to share, they'll want equal size rooms or nearly equal. So again, always better to go for that property with 2 equal sized bedrooms than a sort of larger bedroom and a smaller room, because you might not just get the rent for that smaller room.
Indeed. I think it's interesting, perhaps, Richard, that one thing we don't consider is that Zoopla can actually help landlords find their way to, a reputable agent that is kind of dominating their local area. How would they use the site to do that, do you think?
Well, when you search for a property, you can sort of obviously see who the agents are listing each property. But we do have something called Find an Agent, where you can go in and you can sort of see all the agents in a local market. So yeah, we do try and drive as much traffic as possible down to agents. I think around about half of all landlords out there use letting agents, letting and managing agents. I certainly do. It takes a huge comfort to know that someone else, you don't have to sort of be there running around sorting out the property at a last minute's notice. And I think, but equally for some people with large portfolios where it's almost becoming semi-professional for them, then it's probably quite a sensible thing to sort of to manage it yourself. But yeah, there's a lot of agents out there. So we've got a very liquid rental market. I think agents, not just finding tenants, they can also give you advice, what the right thing to do is. Because again, I think many people think as homeowners. But again, when you're in the lettings market, you need to think what renters want, what demand is, etc. So it's always important to consult an agent on sort of what the options are and to get that view of that rental side view of the market rather than sales.
No, I totally agree, and they are a mine of local knowledge. I think just another little tip that I do is I tick the let agreed box, and then I see which agent has let the most properties. So that's just a really simple thing to do as well, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's we've sort of got plans to sort of just enrich the whole experience, abilities to find agents, find more information. There's a huge amount of information already on Zoopla, but I think that there's much more that all participants, all the tribes in the market would love to see.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining me again, Richard, here on our Landlord 2020 Vision campaign. That is going to continue throughout January, and we will be talking to more industry commentators and stakeholders and landlords to get their view on what landlords should be focusing on over the next 12 months to have a profitable year. So do stay tuned to this campaign. More to come.